This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's up, Detroit sports fans? Welcome back to the Fan Reporter Show, made by fans for fans, powered by the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I'm Nick, and my boy Andrew sitting right across from me is going to give us this week's topics.
This week, we begin our draft coverage series where we evaluate potential Lions draft prospects, position group by position group. So in this episode, we're going to kick it off with edge rushers. We'll also continue to discuss the Pistons' ongoing playoff push, so let's get into it.
All right, so do you want to start with Pistons or do you want to start with Lions tonight, Andrew?
You already know, as always, start with the Lions.
Do we always start with the Lions? Yeah.
Oh, man, it's got amnesia today.
Apparently. I guess I completely forgot we always start with Lions. Anyways, though, yeah, so we can start with the Lions. That works for me. So obviously this week we're doing the position breakdown. We're gonna do the edge rushers this week. So that includes the linebackers that, the 3-4 outside linebackers, as well as the defensive ends, and even the guys that can move outside from the inside. So guys that you can move around and stand up and rush the passer. Yeah. Okay. Guess I'll mute that. Thank you.
We can talk about AI if we want.
I mean, we can.
I'd gladly sit and talk about AI for an hour.
AI is so much fun to talk about. He's awesome. But
as long as you don't talk about practice.
No, we talking about practice, man. Not a game, but practice. No, Andrew, go ahead and take the lead with this one here. So do you want to go, how many of these guys do you want to do? Do you want to do it in a certain format? Do you want to just give your top guy and we'll go from there? Kind of break each guy down?
We'll just break each guy down, and then at the end, I think we'll each give who we think most likely is and who our favorite to go is, our favorite actual pick to go is.
Obviously,
I mean, we'd all say we'd all say Nick Bosa.
Right, we got to talk about the guys that we don't think will get to the Lions, but
your favorite realistic Lions pick after we...
Fair enough. All right, so go ahead and take the lead guy here, and I'll kind of piggyback off of it.
Yeah, let's start with the top end here. I mean, the clear number one edge rusher in this draft is Nick Bosa.
Is he still considered the clear number one?
To me, yeah.
I would tend to agree, but I've seen some mocks put Josh Allen ahead of him. I've even seen some mocks put Quinnen Williams ahead of him, even though he's not an edge rusher.
Surprising.
The injury, he had the bicep injury, so you could argue that kind of knocked him down a peg. It does sound like he's going to be ready to go. But go ahead and give me your breakdown on the guy. I agree with you, by the way, that he is the number one guy.
So, you know me. I love even though I don't buy these half the time, I love to look at player comparisons. And one of my favorite ones to point at, this reason why I don't buy him, is Kawhi Leonard's player comparison with Al-Farouq Aminu. Nothing against Al-Farouq Aminu, but
he's not very good.
he ain't no Kawhi. So I'm just going to start off by saying NFL comparison, according to NFL.com, is Walter Bennett. If that doesn't get you, Michael Bennett. I said Walter.
Walter Bennett.
Because I have Walter Football open on my.
Gotcha.
But it's Michael Bennett. So if that doesn't already get you titillated, I don't know what does. But,
no, that definitely excites me. The comparisons I've seen a lot of, and it's kind of obvious as to why, is his own brother Joey Bosa. I've seen a lot of comparisons, Joey Bosa, in terms of the skill set.
That's an easy one to make.
And it makes a lot of sense considering, they grew up together, they played football together, just makes a lot of sense to have his comparison to be his own brother. But I do like the Michael Bennett comparison. Michael Bennett, before injuries and off-the-field issues started happening, he was one of the premier edge rushers in the league, had a lot of really good years with Seattle. Made that pass rush as powerful as it was when they had guys like Cliff Averill coming off the other side as well. So that pass rush was deadly, and he was a massive part of that for sure.
Yeah, and this guy, Nick Bosa is he's a force on the edge. He's hard to stop. He has great hands, great strength. He can fight off blocks. He almost makes it easy, look easy fighting off blocks. Really good burst, and he almost puts quarterbacks down too hard. I mean, you get
which is a problem in the NFL. Just ask Clay Matthews.
Now there is worry that we basically haven't seen the guy play in a year, but I mean, I don't. The guy is young. I don't think you could really expect.
No, I mean, we saw how he came back in the combine. We saw him there and how healthy he looked there. I felt like that was a really big step for him in terms of his pre-draft situation. Was if he shows up healthy to the combine, is there any question that he's a top guy? And I believe it was a core muscle injury, not a bicep, by the way. But if he shows up to the combine healthy, in which he did, there's no question at that point. I mean, the guy's got great size. He's 6'3". He's got great height at that position, able to get his hands in the passing lane if need be. If he can't get to the quarterback, he's able to get his hands up and block the pass. And that's something that's really important when it comes to edge rushers that cause a lot of havoc, put your hands in the passing lanes at quarterbacks. The weight is 266. It's not exactly the heaviest guy coming off the edge, but he's got elite athleticism. He runs a 4.7 940, 1.6 10-yard split, which is arguably more important with the edge rushers, that 10-yard split number. Very quick, has very high acceleration. He's able to get off the ball very quickly, or off the line very quickly. Someone that's seemingly always in the backfield. Doesn't always hit the quarterback or get to the quarterback, but seemingly always in the backfield.
A damn hard guy to block.
Destroying the pocket, forcing the quarterback to move, cutting off half the field. Yes, he sheds them so easily because he's got great footwork and great hand-eye coordination and great technique with his hands that he's able to rush the passer. But he also was able to rely on just pure elite athleticism at the position as well.
Yeah.
He's, in my opinion, the most well-rounded with the highest ceiling edge rusher coming into this draft, no question. No question. I mean, looking at what his own brother's done in the league for the Chargers and how elite he's been and how fantastic and how quickly he kind of picked up going into the league, because that's a position that there's a lot to learn, and it's a position that not everybody translates well from college to the NFL. And his brother translated almost immediately, and has looked fantastic since he's been in the league. And I feel like Nick Bosa is a guy who can be the next candidate for that. So Nick Bosa, I mean, he's again an elite talent with elite athleticism and a great head on his shoulders as well. So
and another really big strength from him, another interesting aspect for teams drafting high is the fact that he fits just as well in a 4-3 as in a 3-4. You can line him up on the outside, you can stand him up, you can have him right on the line.
The fact that he has the size that he has, with the 270-pound frame and things like that. The fact that he has that type of size, you can move him around. You can use him in different sides. You can use him on both sides of the line. You can stand him up on both sides of the line. And it's something that's nice. It's really good to use that to keep the quarterback in his pre-snap reads off guard. You never know where the blitz is coming from. You never know where Nick Bosa is coming from off the edge. The ability to move him around is something that a lot of coaches, especially defensive coordinators now, just absolutely are infatuated with when it comes to their edge rushers. Is, can I move this guy? Is he a chess piece that I can take and place anywhere along the line and say, go get the quarterback? Get past your man and go get the quarterback. He's a guy that I would argue day one draws double teams. Day one draws double teams from the O-line, which obviously makes the guy next to him better every day, every play, every single play.
Can you imagine Thanksgiving at the Bosa household?
Oh, God. Do you think they play football?
Like, their dad was number one pick, too, back in the 80s.
Do you think they play a game of football? I know a lot of families play a Thanksgiving Day football game. Does the Bosa family play a game?
They're probably too worried about preserving their health. Dad, I can't really tear my ACL for the game. They're probably not even home for Thanksgiving, to be honest with you, right now, at least.
I would imagine they're not home. But if they were, but
again, the Dolphins don't really play on Thanksgiving. Not the Dolphins.
Chargers.
The Chargers don't really play on Thanksgiving.
No, they don't. But either way, he's still got to play Sunday. He's got to be with the team, depending on if he's traveling or not. A lot of factors involved there. But definitely, I would argue that Nick Bosa is. I keep wanting to say Joey Bosa, but Nick Bosa is the top edge rusher in the draft, and without a doubt, the top defensive end. If we're going to go position only, not just the outside linebackers as well, but position, he's the best defensive end and best edge rusher in the NFL draft in my mind.
Moving on to the other next best edge rusher, almost guaranteed top 5 pick as well, Josh Allen.
I will agree with you there.
6'5", 262 pounds. He is a 33.5-inch wingspan. NFL comparison to Anthony Barr. I mean, again, some titillating comparisons. But his senior year in Kentucky, he get 88 tackles in 13 games, which is tied for 6th in the nation. 21 and a half of those tackles were for a loss. And he ranks second in the FBS in sacks with 17 and forced fumbles with 5. I mean, those are some gaudy stats right there.
And it's not like he's playing in a no-name conference really either. If I recall, Kentucky plays in the SEC. That's no joke of a conference. That's not exactly the best team in the SEC. That's That's a tough team, that's a tough conference to play in, obviously. I mean, I know it's not the right division, so to speak. Let me just verify real quick. I do want to say they're in the SEC. I'm almost positive.
And what's the verdict?
I'm getting there. Yes, Southeastern Conference. So there we go.
He plays for John Calipari, right?
Yes. No, shut up. Coach Cal is. Did you see the contract that they offered Coach Cal today?
Lifetime, baby.
Yeah. But anyways, it's obviously a very tough conference to play in with a lot of size and a lot of athleticism and elite talent. So it's a tough conference for a player to play in and make a name for himself, especially at a smaller school like a Kentucky. But he makes a name for himself. He does what he's got to do to make things happen. And Josh Allen is, again, one of those elite athleticism guys. He's got great footwork. He's very quick off the line, explosive, very high motor. Just extremely athletic, great size, great length. I mean, the arm size is just beautiful for an edge rusher. He's able to use his hands to get the edge on a blocker and just shed him with his hands. And the size, I mean, the size in particular is just beautiful because he's, again, and then the speed, the 4.6, 340. How often do you see a guy at 262 pounds run a 4.6? Give me an example.
Yeah.
The Lions have a certain corner that doesn't run a 4.6. That's ridiculous. And then you talk 10-yard split, which, again, I mentioned is arguably more important for the edge rushers, a 1.61 10-yard split. Those numbers are, if I'm a blocker, that's terrifying. If I'm an offensive line, if I'm an offensive coordinator game planning for having to go up against Josh Allen, I'm immediately putting a tight on his side to kind of chip block him immediately. Yeah. And I'm if I'm not having my running back either run the football or run out for a route, or I'm bringing him in and I'm having him chip block Josh Allen as well, because that speed in the backfield doesn't allow plays to develop. Another guy that's always in the backfield, and when you don't allow plays to develop because you're having to move the pocket and he essentially cuts off half the field, what are you going to do at that point? So Josh Allen at the spot as the second best edge rusher is really no question in my mind. Another guy that you can move around, whether it be on the left or the weak or the strong side. He's obviously much more of a stand-up edge rusher than he is a down edge rusher. But in the right offensive scheme or defensive scheme, that's perfectly fine. A 3-4 or a multiple in some that some teams like to run, and the Lions like to run it. Josh Allen is going to be a perfect fit in any defense that wants him there. So I would absolutely love if the Lions managed to get Josh Allen in this draft. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, now with these two guys, obviously, unless the Lions make a move, chances are they're not going to get either of these two guys. Now, this is in no way a ranking the way we're doing this. I mean, clearly those two are the top two guys, but after this, it's kind of like we're just giving you names and talking about them. So,
well, before we kind of move on,
what's up?
I guess I kind of want to talk about the importance of what the edge rushers become in the NFL.
Okay.
And kind of just pick your brain on why we're seeing. I know this year is really kind of the anomaly year because we have so many elite talent edge rushers and elite skill set with athleticism edge rushers in the top end of this draft. But what has happened in the league where edge rushers have become the kind of premier talent where it's a must-have. Everybody's got to have an elite edge rusher. Otherwise, you're just a nobody. If you don't have an elite pass rusher, that's probably your top one year. That's probably your top priority in the draft for next year and free agency. Lions are a perfect example. Raiders are a perfect example of that. Why has this position become so important, and how has it evolved in today's game?
It's basically a lot of it is adapting to the way the league is moving towards more of a passer-friendly league, and the edge rusher has they have a lot of responsibilities in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback. And when the league is going the way we're seeing the league going, that becomes incrementally more important. So teams that aren't able to get pressure on the quarterback, aka don't have good edge rushers to do that, those are teams that you see struggling defensively now. Agree? Disagree?
I will not disagree with that at all. I mean, looking at the way that the NFL has changed the game offensively, I mean, you're looking at teams throwing the ball 30, 40, 50 times a game now. And when you have guys that, Now with them throwing the football as many times as they are, you almost have to have elite edge rushers to combat that. It's harder to play secondary in today's league than it ever has been. You can't touch a receiver anymore. So how do you stop a receiver from just burning you or beating you or getting open? You speed up the quarterback's clock. You rush him. You force him to make an earlier throw than you would like, or before a route is able to develop. And that's what the elite edge rushers are able to do. That's what the top-end talent's able to do, and why top-end edge rushers are so important in today's NFL. So I definitely agree with that. But let's go ahead and move on to the next guys. My next guy, and again, this isn't in any kind of ranking order, but my next guy to look at is a guy by the name of Montez Sweat, the outside linebacker / defensive end from Mississippi State.
Sticking with draft combine phenom.
Yes, sticking with the SEC here.
Yeah.
I believe same division as Kentucky as well. But you want to talk great size, 6'6", 260. Slightly heavier than a certain man by the name of Jason Taylor, but same height. You want to talk elite athleticism, this guy's got it. A 4.4 140 at the combine with a 1.55 10-yard split. That's like burner speed. That's wide receiver type speed. This is a guy weighing 260 pounds. That's a wide receiver.
Not going to be able to outrun, I'll tell you that much.
Oh, God, no. No. The guys like Lamar Jackson better watch out.
Do not let him get in your backfield.
Absolutely not. If he's in your backfield, he's going to cause problems. Montez Sweat is a guy who, 35.5-inch arm length, 9.9-inch hand length. I mean, you talk elite athleticism, this guy's got it. The high-end speed here is just ridiculous. And his length is just ridiculous. Another guy who's able to take down a blocker with his hands because he gets to him quicker. Exactly. That's where guys like Jonah Williams may struggle in the NFL, is because they don't have the same length. But, excuse me, he's an absolutely dynamic playmaker on the defense side of the ball. Last year he totaled an SEC leading 10.5 sacks, 15.5 tackles for loss, and 48 tackles on the season. And the guy's, no question, he earned every one of those sacks and every one of those tackles for loss. He fights his way into the backfield, gets off the line quicker. He just straight up beats his man off the line and gets back there and causes problems. There's a lot of questions on Montez Sweat. I would argue this is one of the bigger risks at the top end of this draft because of the fact that, yes, he was a player at Michigan State and he got kicked out of the school because of marijuana, pot issues. Before he ended up going to Mississippi State, go figure.
And the other knock here is just how raw he is in general.
Yes.
Coming out, there's a lot of refining that.
You could argue he's someone that
with this game.
You could argue he's someone that overly relies on his speed and athleticism, which doesn't always translate in the NFL. There's a lot of very athletic, very fast guys in the NFL in 2019, and just using that does not necessarily equate to success.
He's got all the tools.
It's not often we see this type of speed at the edge rusher, but he's got the tools to be elite. He's just got to hone the craft a little bit, work the technique more, work the footwork, kind of just build up his abilities as opposed to just relying on raw talent and skill. So another red flag with Montez Sweat, though, was something that came out post-combine, was the heart condition.
Yes.
There was a report that came out that he had a minor heart condition that has slid him down a little bit in certain mocks. Whether or not, this is serious, there's been conflicting reports on that it may or may not be. Certain teams are going to continue to check on him, but there's been a lot of reports that say it's not a serious thing. It's not a life-threatening or long-term thing. It's something that he just has that he's able to play with. Heart conditions are scary. Obviously, it's not something you want to have on your team as one of your premier guys. There's no question about that, because you never know when something minor could turn into something major. But it does, from the sound of it, seem like he's almost been cleared, and that's a good sign for him, good sign for his health, and a good sign for the scouts that are looking at him very closely, including the Lions. This guy that's been mocked to the Lions a lot.
Yeah.
So. I wouldn't be upset if the Lions took this guy. It's a little bit more of a risk, but with having Trey Flowers there, they can afford to take a risk at this position. Having him line up opposite Trey Flowers would just be deadly scary. Where's the quarterback going to go at that point? Backwards? Because that's all I can see. But what are your thoughts on Montez Sweat?
Let's hope that Stafford can find a receiver downfield though. With the kind of receiving core we have now outside of Kenny Galladay, it's a little scary to me. But no, I kind of echo your sentiment on Montez Sweat. In elite speed, elite athleticism, again, it reminds me a lot of when Ziggy was coming out. Like he had all the tools to be an elite edge rusher. He was just a very raw talent. Now Montez Sweat it's not quite as raw as Ziggy was because Ziggy had only been playing football for a few years when he came into the NFL, but it's that same kind of thing. Like a guy that has all the tools, that's really raw, but with the proper coaching, he can be that guy. And for a while,
honestly, though, Ziggy Ansah worked out if it weren't for the exactly. He worked out if it weren't for the health. Yes, and honestly, though, the health could be a factor with Montez Sweat as well. And you also have some off the field issues with Montez Sweat. This guy does not come without his risks. There's no question about that.
There are rumors of all the NFL relaxing the marijuana policy. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But
oh God, please let it happen.
Yeah, no, right?
I would rather see these guys.
The NFL's gonna be the last sport to do it. To be honest with you,
yes, it will be. It's the last sport to. It's gonna be the last sport to bring it to allow sports gambling. It's gonna be the last sport to relax on its marijuana policy, and which is weird for the gambling aspect because gambling is such a major reason why the NFL is as popular as it is, and football is as popular with fantasy football, but. They're sticklers with a lot of this stuff, and honestly, with the physicality that this game has and the level of injury that these guys go through on a week-to-week basis, I would rather see these guys smoking pot than popping pills.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I agree.
So go ahead and give us our next guy here, Andrew, unless you got more to add on Montez Sweat.
No, next guy, I'm going to go with Rashawn Gary as our next guy to talk about.
Okay, I like that one. I like that one a lot.
And
local boy, Michigan.
Local kid.
Michigan boy.
He's a big boy, too, at 277 pounds.
He's a big boy.
6'4".
Now, he did play kind of out of position at Michigan, mind you. He's more... This isn't really a guy that is much of a... he's not as much of a stand-up guy as he is a down lineman. He can play interior and exterior lineman. And a lot of the reasons, there's been a lot of negatives and a lot of narratives against Rashawn Gary. And a lot of them had to do with the fact that he kind of just disappeared in his last season at Michigan. He wasn't anywhere near... And in the big games in particular, he wasn't important.
As a sophomore, he had 66 tackles, 12 for a loss with 6 sacks. And then going to his junior year, that dropped by 22 numbers of 44 tackles. He went from 12 to 7 for a loss. He went from 6 sacks to 3.5 sacks. And that was just in one less game.
Yeah.
So, there was a major drop-off from his sophomore to his junior year. So there are... Obviously, teams are hoping that this was an anomaly. And
again, you can argue that a lot of it had to do with the fact he's playing out of position.
Yeah.
You're looking at, again, one of the premier athletes in terms of combination of size and speed in the edge rusher position in this draft. A guy who ran a 4.58 40 with a 1.63 10-yard split.
Yeah.
That's elite athleticism at the position. Especially, how many boys do you know at 277 pounds run a 4.5 40?
He's got 70 pounds on me at least, and I don't run anywhere near.
You run like a 7.5 40. All right, let's be real. No, there's no question this guy has absolutely elite skill, speed, size, and a lot of the reason. But, does he have the mental fortitude to be able to, be the guy to step up in a big game? Last year we saw him dwindle in some of those games. The game against Michigan State, he dwindled. Some of the bigger games, he was a non-factor. And that's kind of been the case for a few years at Michigan.
And they're knocking him is just he gets kind of sloppy sometimes.
He does. He doesn't. He tries to overly rely on skill and speed, and doesn't hone in the doesn't stick with the technique, which you could argue is a more important skill to have as an edge rusher.
And then again, all these things are teachable, as well as the fact that he really has only one go-to move, and that's the bull rush. He doesn't.
Yes.
He needs to add to the arsenal, and that's again another thing that's teachable.
Very teachable.
So this is a
teaching a swing
kid.
move off the edge is something that a lot of coaches have had to do. A lot of D-line coaches have had to do in the NFL. So, or a spin move, or whatever kind of move they want to give him. He's a guy that you can, he is a guy you can put on either side of the line. Having him line up opposite Trey Flowers would be kind of nice. But this is a guy you have to admit there's a lot of inherent risk involved with him as well.
Yeah.
He's a great fit as a base end in a 4-3. A generic 4-3. He can play a little bit of outside linebacker in a 3-4. He's not as comfortable with that, but in a 4-3 defense, he's a great guy to have. I mean, he would be a 5 technique in a 3-4. So you would have him, either down on the outside there, have him rush the passer from there, which is fine, which is more of what like an Aaron Donald would be, comparison there. But he's a guy that you can move around and make something with. He's a chess piece, something that a lot of coaches, again, like I mentioned, love to have. I like Rashawn Gary a lot. However, the risk for him worries me quite a bit. The downtrend for him worries me quite a bit. And it's no secret that you and I are both Michigan State fans. But I'll tell you right now, I didn't think he was the best player on that defense. I thought Devin Bush was the best player on that defense. I think Devin Bush will be an absolute gamer in the NFL. But you can't argue raw talent and speed. And, whether or not the coachability is there is something that we have yet to see. But I have a lot of high hopes for Rashawn Gary in the NFL as well. So,
next guy I want to throw out, or wait, no, it's your turn, isn't it?
Oh, go ahead.
If
you got a name, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out Clelin Ferrell.
Ooh, this is one of my favorite guys in the draft.
I would argue, well, to give you just a quick background, 6'4", 264, coming out of Clemson. He did not run a 40 in the combine. But
I don't blame him. They do have projected 40 times for him at 4.77. With the other guys out there, I kind of don't blame him for not running the 40.
Oh, no, I agree with you 100%. But this past year at Clemson, he garnered 53 tackles, 19.5 for a loss, 11.5 sacks, as well as 4 pass breaks and 3 forced fumbles. So that's pretty impressive right there. He was, and this is not like he's playing against terrible teams. I mean, the ACC's
been pretty good.
The same league conference, and the last 2 years when they matched up against Alabama in the national championship game,
shined.
Yeah, in
absolutely
both games.
Shined.
So
he also, not to mention, he also, in terms of what the talent is on that Clemson D line, you're talking about guys like Christian Wilkins, you're talking about guys like Clelin Ferrell. There's many first round picks on that D line for Clemson.
Yeah.
And which you can argue is a positive and a negative for Clelin Ferrell. The negative being that having that elite top tier talent next to you makes you look better than you actually are.
Very true.
Very true. However, he was also the most consistent of all of them.
Yeah.
Which is something that's a massive positive for him, being able to do what he was able to do on a consistent basis. And again, he's not a guy that relies on speed and athleticism because he's not the most quick or athletic guy coming off the edge. But what he does have is absolutely elite technique and skill set. He's got multiple moves off the end. He's got the ability to use his hands to shed a blocker. He's got the ability to run a fake on a blocker and get around him that way. He's one of the smartest and most technically sound defensive ends or outside linebackers or edge rushers in this draft. He is a pure defensive end, I believe.
Yes.
But he's one of the most pure, sound, technical edge rushers in this draft. And that's, in a draft that is chock full of elite skill and athleticism and raw talent at the edge rusher position, this is arguably the guy that is one with the lower ceiling, but has the highest floor of all of them.
As well as probably the most NFL ready.
Yes.
Outside of, obviously your
outside of, your Nick Bosa's,
but
yes.
From the guys who are discussing right now in this mid-tier, he's the most NFL ready out of all of them, including the next guy we're going to discuss, too.
Absolutely. I would argue that Clelin Ferrell is one of the safer picks to have, and honestly, this is a guy that I would not mind the Lions taking at 8 and reason, or trading back to even take. Kind of
because
putting your feelers out.
Be too early.
Kind of putting your feelers out and seeing what teams are looking at with Clelin Ferrell, maybe moving back into the early teens to grab him there. But I wouldn't even be mad to see him grab him at 8. Reason being, you've got Trey Flowers opposite him. You can have these two just work. Just go to work. Get to the quarterback that way. Let Clelin Ferrell do his job. Be the technically sound guy you have coming off the opposite end of Trey Flowers and wreak havoc in the backfield. And, he reads plays so well. And that's something that the Lions really need. They had a very good rush defense by the end of the year with the addition of Snacks Harrison, and then you add in Trey Flowers and Clelin Ferrell to that. Now you've got a really good pass rush as well on paper. I wouldn't mind to see the Lions take him because of that. Again, not elite athleticism, not elite speed, but elite technique and skill set. And that's something that's, that he doesn't need to be taught in the NFL. So he's a guy that you would come in and say, all right, starter day one, make something happen. You don't need to teach him anything.
Yeah.
He's already got it.
Agreed. Move on to who I believe will be our last guy on.
I would imagine this guy would be our last one, and it is a guy by the name of Brian Burns. Defensive end, outside linebacker, pure edge rusher out of Florida State University. This is a guy that's just kind of really skyrocketed up draft boards lately. And had a fantastic combine. He's a lot smaller than most of these guys. You're talking to 249. He's more of an outside line, 249 pounds, 6'4", more of a pure outside linebacker than he is a defensive end. He's definitely a lot smaller in terms of his weight than most of these guys, so he's going to have to beef up a little bit. But a 4.5 340 with a 1.6 110-yard split. The 4.5 340 is just ridiculous. Had a fantastic workout as well. He's a guy that, again, has just skyrocketed up draft boards because of essentially ceiling. Pure raw talent. This is probably the most raw of the bunch of the defense of the edge rushers in this draft. He's got a ridiculous ceiling because of the speed and athleticism, but he is one that is probably the furthest from being NFL ready. He overly relies on that athleticism and overly relies on that speed to make things happen. There's going to have to be a lot of coaching involved with Brian Burns as he moves in here. I mean, initially after the combine, I believe, pre-combine, he was looked at as a second-round edge rusher. Now he's skyrocketed into that the top 10 area. Top 15, top 10 is where I've seen him go quite a bit. So he's had quite the impact since then.
I think one of my favorite things about him is, and I'm pulling this one from NFL.com. So the first thing NFL.com describes him as is a basketball athlete, which you don't hear much in use with
except for the guys that
rushers.
were basketball players like Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, but the guy does project out both in the 4-3-3-4 edge rusher, linebacker, defensive end. Edge rusher, defensive end. That's what I say. But again, he does. I am still debating in my head where I think his ceiling is higher than Montez Sweat.
He's a little small for a 4'3" defensive end, though. 250 pounds, a little bit worrisome on that outside. I mean, granted, Jason Taylor weighed 244, but Taylor
is, that's what he played at Florida State, though, isn't it?
What?
4-3 defensive end.
He played outside linebacker and defensive end. So he was up and down.
Yeah.
But that's also in college football.
True.
NFL is a lot bigger. Yes, they're going to beef him up, but how much weight can they add and still keep that top end speed is my question. He is by far the smallest of the bunch.
So I would say, I'm still struggling to say he has a higher ceiling than Montez Sweat, but I will say I think his ceiling is higher than both Colin Farrell's and Rashawn Gary's. Just because the athleticism he brings to the table.
I'm not quite ready to say the ceiling is higher than both those guys. Rashawn Gary has an ability to, if he hones his crafts a little bit, has an ability to be that elite tier edge rusher. I just think he's a different player from Rashawn Gary.
He's a very different player.
You're talking about a guy that, while they both rely on athleticism and speed, you're talking about a guy who's like 30 pounds lighter than Rashawn Gary as well. There's a big difference in the way that they play the game there.
Yeah.
And also, Rashawn Gary is a much more down lineman than he is an up linebacker. So there's a lot of difference there. Montez Sweat's a little bit closer of a comparison. And you can argue that the ceiling is higher for Brian Burns than Montez Sweat, but I would rather have Montez Sweat in terms of the floor. Brian Burns could absolutely flame out of the league after his rookie deal. There's no question about it. He just could not stick. The lack of size, the lack of technique.
Guys of similar size, like Leonard Floyd for the Bears. I mean, he has similar size, and he's not a Pro Bowler by any means, but he's a solid defensive end. I don't think he's reached the ceiling, but
Leonard Floyd was a little bit bigger than that.
Leonard Floyd?
Yeah.
Oh, no, he's pretty thin for defensive end.
Is he? I mean, the name that comes to mind for me, obviously, and I've mentioned him a few times, is Jason Taylor. He weighed 240. He's 251, so he's even smaller. But Are we talking like if we're talking Brian Burns, the ceiling? If we're saying his comparison is Leonard Floyd, is that really a higher ceiling than a guy like Montez Sweat? Though
I said it's not. I said I struggle to say it's a higher ceiling than Montez Sweat, but I could see him being higher because again, Leonard
Floyd plays linebacker, by the way.
I know, but if we're talking that's his ceiling, that means that's like what he's expected to do. But
So-
that's not a ceiling.
But we are talking a different position here. He does play purely outside linebacker for the Bears. Sorry.
I thought he plays both.
No, he's listed as a linebacker. He probably comes down a little bit, but he is listed as a linebacker. Apparently, Leonard Floyd also has had weight problems. Apparently, he's getting a little too small.
But yeah, so I just think that athleticism is too hard to ignore, and that's why I put his.
Sorry, that was going into the combine. He was 235 playing weight, and he showed up at the combine at 244.
But I just think that speaking of athleticism is a little too hard to ignore, and that's why I put his ceiling a little bit higher than. Not saying he's going to be better than them, but he has a little more potential at the end of the day than Rashawn Gary and Clelin Ferrell. You know, Clelin Ferrell.
Well, you mentioned Montez Sweat first.
No, I said I don't think he's. I struggle putting him above Montez Sweat.
Oh, I completely agree that he has a higher ceiling than Clelin Ferrell. I think Clelin Ferrell, of all these guys that we mentioned, is the lowest ceiling. He just has the highest floor.
Yeah.
Outside of like Nick Bosa.
Exactly.
But in the reason being, he's also the most NFL ready. You can put him in now, and he can be an immediate impact.
Yeah.
Versus Brian Burns may take a couple of years to kind of figure out how to play in the league and figure out how to shed blockers.
Yeah.
Brian Burns, you could completely miss on. I don't think there's a possibility you can completely miss on Clelin Ferrell. But Clelin Ferrell, I don't know, will ever be an All-Pro.
Yeah.
Brian Burns, you can argue, could be.
So between these guys, among these guys that we discussed, who do you think the Lions are most likely to take if they were to take a defensive end, and who is your favorite prospect?
The guy I've seen mocked to them the most lately has been Rashawn Gary. I think that he fits perfectly into Matt Patricia's scheme in that multiple style defense. He's a guy that they can move around and do a lot of things with. That's Matt Patricia's favorite player is a guy that he can move around, a chess piece, and that's what Rashawn Gary is. So I would argue that Rashawn Gary would be a great fit for them. I'm just worried about whether or not he can translate, whether or not he can step up in the big games. Another name that I would like to see them grab and is likely going to be available there is Montez Sweat. I have no issue with them taking Montez Sweat.
So you're saying you think they're going to take Rashawn, you want them to take Montez Sweat?
I would prefer Montez Sweat based on the fact that the elite ability is there. Can you imagine? Just close your eyes for me for a second and just picture Montez Sweat and Trey Flowers on opposite sides going after the quarterback. Does anybody have any time in that backfield to do a
you
damn
still have
thing?
Deshaun Hand.
And you still got Deshaun Hand and Romeo Okwara. I mean, you still got guys out there that you can rotate in. And you got, forget to mention, you got big old Snacks Harrison clogging up the middle. I mean, that's terrifying. That is a D line. That is a pass rush that goes from back end of the league to, you could argue, the talent that is there to be a top 10 pass rush in the league at that point.
And trade all the rest of your picks and move up and grab Devin White.
So you're trying to fix a defense with two players.
Yes.
I have zero issues with Montez Sweat. I would love for them to take him. And a guy like Clelin Ferrell, if the Lions are willing to move back just a few spots, Clelin Ferrell would be a great fit as well. Again, because he'd immediately start being an impact. And that's something that I would like to see. He's a guy that they could rotate in, give a different look with a guy like Romeo Okwara and Deshaun Hand, guys like that. I would prefer them to stay away from Brian Burns. I know I mentioned I'm willing to take a bit of a risk because we have Trey Flowers.
Eight's a little too high for Brian Burns. I mean, I've seen a couple.
I've seen him go pretty high, like top 5, top 6.
I've seen a couple drafts where he sneaks up there, but like the vast majority of drafts, I've seen him in mid to late lottery to almost like 18,
lottery.
19.
There's a different sport right there.
I know,
but
that's how
I agree with you. I would prefer them to stay away from Brian Burns just because I'm not ready. Like I feel like he's just too big of a risk, and I do think at 8 that's too much. Mortgage. It's too much of a mortgage into a guy that very easily could not pan out.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, that's true with all these guys, but he's probably the most riskiest of the bunch. Yes, with Montez Sweat, you have the added factor of the off-field issues and the health issues, but you also have some health issues with Rashawn Gary. He missed 3 games with an AC shoulder joint sprain. I mean, he sat out the bowl game, and every one of these guys has inherent risk, but I would argue Brian Burns is the most, and that's why I would want to stay away from him. I'd look at guys like Rashawn Gary, Montez Sweat, and Clelin Ferrell in that order probably, or even Montez Sweat, Rashawn Gary, Clelin Ferrell.
Yeah, I think they're going to look Rashawn Gary, Montez Sweat, Ferrell.
Right.
I prefer Montez Sweat over Rashawn.
I'll agree with you there.
Just because, like you said, Rashawn Gary fits so well into Matt Patricia's system.
Exactly, but so does Montez Sweat. He's also another chess piece.
But then you have Brawl versus...
Yes. Yeah. Now, I will say this, though. Let's all cross our fingers and say our prayers that crazy things happen in the top 5 and get Josh Allen or Nick Bosa drop outside the top 5 into us. Yeah.
I would go absolutely insane. I'd go crazier than I did when Michigan State beat Duke.
That'd be amazing.
You know, I did drop that in there somewhere.
Honestly, I'm kind of a little bit, bothered.
Why?
I have a bone to pick.
All right, we're not going to get into this right now. We're running short.
No, I know. But I have a little bit of a bone to pick. Just a little bit. I won't get too much into it. What's up with the narrative on that game? The post-game narrative. Yes, the ESPN narrative. Not just ESPN, but everybody. Mm-hmm. Every single article I see about this game is Duke failed.
Yeah,
Duke upset.
Duke's the national darlings now.
Duke. Why not Michigan State? This is arguably the best coach Michigan State team that Tom Izzo has had since his last championship.
Like Duke's not the national darlings in the media right now.
Why? I get it. It's Zion. I get it. But at the same time, give some damn credit to that Michigan State basketball team. They deserve it.
Yeah, well, I agree. But one quick tidbit that dropped during the show that I want to get to before we move on a little bit of Pistons
don't even
talk
forget to mention the ESPN article today. What a joke.
C.J. Anderson, Sound Lions.
I was going to mention
right before we went live with this podcast here.
Yes.
You like the signing?
I love it. I actually have been asking for this when I started asking for this was when I saw that C.J. Anderson hadn't been signed yet. Mm-hmm. And I knew he was a free agent, but I thought he had been signed by someone because I expected him because he was so good at the end of last year with Todd Gurley being out. And the reason I saw that he wasn't signed was because he posted on Twitter that he just wanted a shot. He wanted a shot to play 16. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I was like, I don't know if he'd go for it, but I'd love to see the Lions grab C.J. Anderson. Yeah. He's shown an ability to be a really good running back in the NFL. He showed it with Denver. He showed it with L.A. He's got the ability to be a really good. Did I say linebacker?
No, I think you said linebacker.
Could have sworn I said linebacker, but he's got the ability to show. He's shown that he could be a really good running back in the NFL, and he's got the ability to do it here in Detroit because Detroit is going to rely yet tread cautiously with Kerryon moving forward, which is how I think they should run their backfield. I'd say like a 60-40 carry split even. Give Kerryon 60, C.J. Anderson 40. I'm perfectly happy with that.
Yeah,
perfectly happy with that.
Like, a lot of people don't realize C.J. Anderson in 2017, before he joined the Rams, he was coming off a 1,000-yard rushing season.
Yeah.
He went to Carolina, didn't really get a chance to play. Then he went to the Rams. In 2 starts of the Rams in the regular season, he rushed for 300 yards.
Yeah,
and then in the
you're talking about a guy who's already had a 1,000-yard season in the NFL.
And then in the postseason, 4.1 yard rushing average,
which is slightly below average, but it's okay.
When you're a backup, not really you're not really getting a rhythm. I mean, it's still pretty good.
Granted, Todd Gurley hardly played in some of those playoff games.
True. Yeah, he took 46 rushing attempts in 3 games.
That's a lot.
C.J. Anderson.
That's a lot.
But so a lot of people before, even before he went to the Rams, like a lot of people even after the Denver season were very down on C.J. Anderson because that Denver season was a very quiet season for him. No one really noticed.
It was a quiet 1,000 yards. Like, it was one of the more quiet 1,000-yard seasons.
And before that, he'd been the star with Denver. He only ran for 437 yards the year before, 720. So he hadn't been very effective. He had that.
He wasn't given the opportunity.
He had that breakout year in 2014. Then after that, he kind of went downhill, and people kind of forgot about him and soured on him. Then he quietly had a 1,000-yard season. Was super effective.
God, was that all the way back in 2014? That breakout year?
Yeah.
Oh man,
he was super effective backing up Todd Gurley, and I would hope that he would be just as effective, or at least close to it, spelling Kerryon Johnson. I would hope that seems to be his sweet spot now. Is is a change of pace guy. That seems to be where he's most effective right now at this stage of his career, and I'm hoping that carries over. And the other thing is, I love how we're basically targeting the Rams running backs. We're just trying to get Malcolm Brown. That didn't work out.
All right, CJ Anderson's fine.
Like CJ, all right, come over here.
I'm totally okay with this signing. This is a guy that I even mentioned to you as soon as I saw that he was unhappy that he wasn't given an opportunity yet. I said to you, look, I want the Lions to go for him if he's willing to play backup duty. If he's willing to, take 30 to 40% of the load. He's going to play 16 games in this team, and I'm good with that. I'm totally fine with that. And he's the guy's talented, man. He deserves an opportunity somewhere. I mean, last year he averaged 6 yards a carry.
Yeah.
That's a ridiculous number. Yes, I know it was in, backup duty and mop-up roles, but in those 2 games he started, he was fantastic. And I know our line's not as good as the Rams. I know our rushing offense is not as good as the Rams. I know we don't run the football as much. But at the same time, he's a perfect complement to what Kerryon is. Kerryon is our East-West runner.
Yeah.
Our guy that's able to break the big play. Our guy that's able to get outside the tackles. CJ Anderson's the guy that'll run between the tackles. He's a guy who do the dirty work.
Yeah.
He is, a more compact LeGarrette Blount. He's a little bit shorter, bigger. Well, not quite as big, but a little bit shorter. He's stocky, and I love it about him. And he's a guy who's going to be the bruiser that's going to get inside and do the dirty work. And he's going to give Kerryon Johnson the spell that he needs and deserves to kind of make sure those ankles and knees stay healthy. And we really need that. And CJ Anderson's a very important piece of this team, and it's something that I absolutely love this signing. I've been asking for them to bring in CJ Anderson for a while. I prefer him over Malcolm Brown, honestly. I really do.
Oh, I agree.
This is, in my opinion, is a fantastic signing for the Lions.
Now let's talk a little bit about the Pistons here before we sign off. They played 3 games this past week, went 2-1. They are fighting for the 40th win currently against Indiana as we record this. I want to say that Denver game was the biggest Jekyll and Hyde game I've ever seen.
It was something.
Went from a 9-point first quarter to playing some of the most intense and inspiring basketball I've seen him play.
Not
after
even
that.
just 9-point first quarter, but they went from having the worst offensive quarter I've seen in my life as a basketball fan, as a Piston fan, to then proceeding to give up almost 40 points in the second quarter.
True.
So they went from terrible offense to god-awful offense to god-awful defense. Yes, they put up 30 of their own, mind you, but 39 points given up in the second quarter. So they were down by, let's do the quick math, 18 plus 9, so 37, 27 points. Sorry, 37. 27 points at the half.
Yeah.
That's insane.
But then the second half, it was like a completely different team came out of the locker room.
It was. The defense, man. They allowed 29 total points in the second half. Total. 15 in the third, 14 in the fourth.
They played with playoff intensity in that second half. It was weird.
Where was it in the first quarter and second quarter?
But then they went on to the next game. They dominated the Orlando Magic. And then they had one of the ugly...
Much easier team.
Yeah.
Easier team.
And they had one of the ugliest wins I've ever seen against the Blazers.
I'm sorry, but that game against the Blazers had one of the worst offensive first quarters I have ever seen as a fan.
I mean, they finished...
Just all around. Not even by just the Pistons, just all around.
Probably my favorite stat line from that game, Pistons shot 20% from 3, Blazers 19%.
Wasn't it after the, in the middle of the second quarter, we looked at the stat line and... One team was shooting 6% from 3. One team was shooting 9% from 3.
Yep.
And we just both bust out laughing.
Like the free throws were like 52%, like 46% or something like that. It was weird.
Just an absolutely ugly game.
Yeah.
And but you know what? And Portland's a good team. And you know what? I'm actually encouraged by a game like this.
Yeah.
Because that shows an ability for the Pistons to grind out a win. Something that I've said that I don't know what this team knows how to do.
Because they do have a tendency to sulk.
Exactly. In this game, they grinded out a win. I don't even know if that's the right usage of the past tense of that term. But
Ground, maybe?
I don't know. But they were able to
try
grind.
that one on for size.
It just sounds weird. But they were able to grind out a win in this game. And that's something that I've wanted the Pistons to do a little bit of. And I haven't seen enough of it, especially against a good team. And this is a good Portland team. And they were able to do it in this game and really not even make it that close. I mean, a 9-point win, that's a statement game. That's a game that says, hey, this wasn't our best night. But we still did it. Don Maker, 2 of 7. Wayne Ellington, 3 of 12. Reggie, 10 of 22, which isn't that bad.
And this one was out Blake Griffin, too, which made it
exactly.
more impressive.
That makes it look even better that this team was able to just fight and claw, stretch and claw their way to a victory in this game where neither team was doing anything offensively.
Remember Alfredo Aminu, the Kawhi Leonard comparison?
Yes.
0 for 9.
Yeah.
All right.
What I find hilarious, though, is a terrible offensive game by both teams still puts up 99 to 90.
Yeah.
That's a far cry from a terrible offensive game back in the day.
Remember the going to work where they had that streak games where they held teams under 70 points with like 12 straight games or something like that? Jesus.
Teams can't even do that in a half nowadays.
Shouldn't we see the Warriors put up 80.5 like a couple months ago? So going from one of the worst starts of the week you could imagine with that first half against Denver, we go on to have Andre Drummond named the player of the week in the East, finishing the week 17.7 points, 18 boards, and 3.7 blocks on 60.
Oh, he had a fantastic game against Portland too.
On 60% shooting.
I want to say he had 22 and 19 on 9 of 13 shooting against Portland. Like he was the lone bright spot in that game.
So with Drummond's recent play, he did have that bit of a week or so slump in there.
The whole
too.
team did.
How is your? I just want to know because when we first did this podcast, we were pretty down on Drummond.
Yeah, we were saying trade his ass.
Yeah, we were ready to trade him. I'm just curious. Through the course of post-trade deadline, basically through the course of this show, I want to say, how has your opinion evolved on Drummond, seeing how he has elevated his play over these past few months?
We're watching a different Drummond mentally. The skill set's the same. I'm not going to lie to you. The skill set's the same. He's a little bit more efficient, and I would chalk that up to coaching because the way the offense is running is helping him be more efficient. He's not taking as many bad shots. He's not turning the ball over as much. But we're looking at a different Drummond mentally. He's focused. He's is there still do we still see a glimpse of the Drummond that takes plays off? Yes. You're never going to coach that out of him. You're never going to get that out of him.
Yeah.
That's just in Andre Drummond's makeup. But what we're seeing is an Andre Drummond that is focused on winning basketball games and mentally wanting to win games. He's mentally fighting for some of these games, and that's something that we haven't seen out of him, honestly, in his entire career here. Yes, he's put up some gaudy stats in terms of, the like 60 some odd double doubles he had a couple years ago. Nice stats, not great win-loss record. This is a different Andre Drummond that we've seen in years past. And this Andre Drummond, I'd like to see on my team in the future. Especially if we have pieces around him that can make up for the lack of space that he provides to the floor. Make up for the fact that he doesn't run the floor as well as some of the other guys out there at his position. Makes up for the fact that he, can't shoot the outside shot. He's within 5 feet. Makes up for some of the defensive lapses. However, guys played some of the best defense of his career this season. Down low, he's been absolutely like a bright spot for them this year. And that's something that has been a big-time negative for him in years past. Yes, he grabbed a couple blocks a game, but at the same time, his man also destroyed him mentally and physically down low. Joel Embiid is straight up in his head. He owns real estate there and has for years. But that was true with lesser centers as well. But not so much anymore. And that has a lot to do with the mental fortitude Drummond's had this season, as well as the fact that Drummond's put in the work defensively. And we've seen him, be a good defensive player for the first time in how long. I'm enjoying having Andre Drummond on this basketball team for the first time ever.
Wow.
Ever.
I mean, I was super excited when he got drafted.
Sure. All right. Since he wasn't even signed. He wasn't even on the team yet.
I remember being at State, sitting in chemistry class, and I was like, everyone's taking notes on what the professor's writing. I'm taking notes on all the bigs in the draft and doing like analysis in my notebook. And then after like the third day doing these notes, I turn back my notebook. It's just throw like 7 circles on Andre Drummond's head. I'm like, this is your guy.
And then he fell to him.
Yep. I didn't think we were going to get him.
No,
like,
I didn't either.
Best case scenario. And then he fell, and I went nuts.
Now, the 2-time, the multiple player of the week award is very nice to have. It's obviously deserving. This is a guy that's earned that. And I'm very encouraged to see, him getting the accolades he deserves. And I hope that just kind of adds to his confidence, adds to the the mojo that he's got going on, and he continues the level of play into the playoffs here. I really do hope he does.
I do want to point one thing out. So since we started this show, we basically started this show right before...
What episode are we on now?
Right before... I'm not sure the
11?
number.
I want to say we're on like 11 now.
Right before we started the show, Drummond had... We were like right in the midst of Drummond getting hurt and missing 3 games in January. But since that happened...
With the concussion, that James Johnson straight up blasted him in the head.
He's averaging 18.9 points per game, 16.4 points per game, as well as 1.8 blocks, 1.7 steals. Now, this is my favorite part. He's shooting close to 70%.
I was going to say, give me the shooting. Give me the shooting.
He's shooting close to 70% from the free throw line.
Love it.
From the free throw line.
Oh, wait. Free throw line.
Yeah.
Whoa, what?
68.3 to be exact.
Do you have the field goal percentage by any chance?
Field goal percentage, 58.4%.
It's not great, but not bad. Okay, I'm a little bit less excited. For a guy who shoots inside 5 feet. You'd be shooting around 65% from there. But I'm okay with what he's got. The free throw percentage is obviously
shooting 14% from 3-point range. By the way, Dwayne,
how many is he taking? Like 7?
Dwayne, he averages 0.2 per game.
So not many.
He takes 1 every 5 games. Dwayne Casey has said this offseason he still wants to continue to work with Drummond and make him a 3-point shooter. They're not giving up on that.
I'm not gonna lie. I like Dwayne Casey.
I don't see it.
It's just not there.
I just don't see the form. I don't see it.
Using a Twitter term, this ain't it. This ain't it.
One last point I want to touch on. Blake Griffin missing his 2nd game tonight with a knee injury. Now, this team was able to pull out a grinded-out win against Portland without him. And they are currently winning against Indiana.
Indiana sucks.
I knew it was coming.
Dude, have you seen their... Come on.
I'm not disagreeing. Are you anywhere... Like, can this team still compete? Can this team still plot to win the playoffs if Blake Griffin's injury ends up like being something that flares up and he can't go?
No. This team has no chance. Blake Griffin is the heart and soul of that team.
Even with DJ Moneymaker, Thon Maker?
No. Sorry. Blake Griffin...
Most people don't know that is Thon Maker's apparent nickname given to him by the team.
You got to remember, Blake Griffin was this entire team for like a solid 2/3 of the season. He carried this basketball team. And yes, he's
not so much lately.
No. He's kind of taken a step back a little bit, to rest up, heal up, whatever. However, he's still the number 1 guy on this team. And there's no question about that. Yeah. When you take away the number 1 guy from any team, they're not as good.
Yeah.
And when you're taking away the number 1 guy from a team that's already a fringe playoff team, because they're only a game and a half ahead of Orlando at the 9, I mean, no, this team can't compete. And honestly, even with him, I struggle to think they can compete with the Sixers of the world. The Torontos of the world, I'd say, yeah, they can compete with that because they've proven that. But they need Blake Griffin to do that. Blake Griffin is their leader, is their focal point, is the number 1 guy on offense, is the guy that they run things through. Without that, you're taking the head off the giant, and it's not a big giant, but it's a giant.
Yeah,
and they can't do nothing without him. I'll be honest with you, they can't do anything without him. And it's sad to say. I seriously hope he gets healthy. I'm hoping this is more of a load management thing without it being load management. Than it is an actual knee injury, because we haven't really heard too much about knee problems this year, and this is the healthiest I've seen Blake Griffin be ever. So I'm hoping this isn't anything serious. I'm hoping he's healthy. I'm hoping he's ready to go by playoff time. I'd honestly...
You shutting him down for the rest of the year?
No, I can't. We're only a game and a half ahead.
True.
I can't. I get him healthy, ready to go. I get that knee rested up, and then I bring him back in immediately. I guarantee... As soon as we lock up that playoff spot...
If we beat Indiana on the road without him today, do you shut him down for the home game against Indiana on Wednesday?
Yes.
Let him rest up again?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Because then we got Oklahoma City on the road after that.
I use him there. I lock up our playoff spot.
We have a 2-game homestand in Charlotte, Memphis, and we go to New York.
After the Indiana game at home, I lock up our playoff spot with him and then shut him down.
Yeah, you want to give him as much rest as possible.
Yes.
But
I lock up our playoff spot.
Hopefully... when we talk to you guys next week, we'll be talking about a 40-plus win Pistons team. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
But that'll do it for us today.
What did
on
I
this
say
episode.
the ceiling was for this team with Dwayne Casey coming in?
I can't remember.
Didn't I say it was like a 45-win team?
Could not remember, to be honest with you. But
Thought
it wasn't on this show.
It wasn't on the show. It would have been on the live show.
That does it for us.
Yes,
on this
that does do it for
edition
tonight.
of the podcast. A little bit of a longer episode, but
Holy wow! Time flew.
yeah, right. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to check out our live show every Monday and Thursday on Twitch, twitch.tv/thefan report. We go live every Monday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and we talk about all things sports, all things
including
movies.
tonight.
Yep. So we'll be talking about the final. We'll be talking about NCAA tournament both nights. So
Yes.
if you want some NCAA tournament coverage, NCAA tournament
We also
coverage,
we also continue with
Go
our
ahead and
mock
tune in.
draft, our NFL mock draft as well.
Correct.
To give you the link, that's www.twitch.tv/thefan report. Well, again, like you mentioned, we're there live a couple nights a week, Monday, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. You know, you can always follow us on Twitter to get updates on that, at Real Fan Report as well, to find us there. So thank you guys again for listening. We will see you guys next week for another episode. This has been the Fan Reporters. Bye, fans.
For fans.
Thank you guys again. Have a good week. I'm just not going to say bye.
Peace.
See you guys.